Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. This is truly an amazing moment because right next to me, I know we don't have a recording, but Jessie's right next to me.
What?
She's in Texas. So I'm so excited. I think it's like weird because we're still kind of recording on the same platform, but she's next to me. So I don't know how to react.
I don't know if I'm supposed to look at the screen zoom or if I'm supposed to look at you in the eyes because I'm so used to looking through a screen, but
what the heck. Anyway, before we get into anything, today we are back with another Wheaton series. I know we had a little bit of a break because we had so many other things on the top of our minds and just other things that we wanted to process. But we're back and we wanted to kind of roll back with the talk of our education and our major. But before any of that, I want to introduce our podcast. We are a podcast that covers a variety of topics from faith, enneagram, being a third culture kid, navigating adulting, and a lot of brain dumps. And before we get into the meat of the episode, hi, my name is Yehna.
Hi, I'm Jessie, and welcome to another episode of
At the Table. Woohoo!
We saved all the hard episodes
Yes.
to record in person together so that, we can share a lifetime face-to-face about how to even approach these conversations.
Emotional support,
Yeah, we did a lot of running through what we're going to talk about today. But like Yehna said, we'll talk about our education department, our experience with it, and now as actual teachers and using our degree, what would we have wanted to be prepared for more? So just kind of looking back, what would we have liked to be supported on a little bit more? So let's get started. The Wheaton Education Department. So Wheaton is known pretty well for their education department. I mean, I feel like it's like the top 3 majors, right?
Yes.
In their university.
And it has a pretty high standard there. So
yeah. So, Yehna, what were some classes that you remember that they covered that you thought were really good?
First class, we had to take the philosophy of education, and that shifted my whole mindset of what education really would be for a student, or even just for myself. And so that was such an impactful class and is a required class. And then, of course, coming with that, I had a lot of other special education specific classes. And there were definitely more challenging ones, but there's one that really stands out to me. And the professor was an adjunct professor. Phenomenal. It was amazing. And the only night class I'll ever have liked in my whole Wheaton career.
So yeah, like we have a lot of prerequisites, and then there's something called methods that you take.
Oh my gosh.
Junior year, second semester. And you cannot take any other classes like that. You have to dedicate that time to
18 credits.
18 credits, learning about the basics of each subject, just learning how to teach. It's an intensive course. And then after that, usually in your fall semester of senior year, you do student teaching. So for those of you guys who don't really know the education department, or what educators learn about, is we get plugged in with a local school around our neighborhood, and you kind of shadow a teacher for that whole semester, kind of being a classroom assistant / just looking
kind of intern /
depending
on which grade you're in terms of, are you a freshman, sophomore? And then when you get to senior year, you're given a little more responsibilities in the teaching.
You teach for 3 weeks. On your own. That's kind of the rundown. Would you say? Is there anything else to add?
Wheaton did a pretty good job in setting up their department and was pretty well known for that, even outside of Wheaton.
Yeah, I agree. So then with that being said, like what were some of the pros that you feel like were really good about the education department from your experience?
Because Wheaton in general was a pretty small school, professors definitely did take time. I can't speak for all of them, but the professors that did truly took time to care for you and look out for you. And even though they may not have been your specific supervisor or mentor, they almost acted that part, if not more so than the people that were assigned to you as an advisor. So I think that was something that really stood out to me. Another more logistical part that stood out to me was the fact that we're required to step into a almost internship position starting freshman year. I think a lot of colleges, they don't do that. Sometimes they like study as students themselves and do book learning all this time, and they are not put into a real local school classroom until almost their senior year. And then they're kind of figure out, oh wait, I don't want to teach. Whereas for a Wheaton, because we were plugged into it starting freshman year, I think it gives us a little more time to process whether we would want to work in a classroom setting or not. And so I think that gives us a lot more leeway in which way we wanted to turn in terms of our career. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah. And it's just nice, locationally, Wheaton's like in smack dab in the middle of a pretty big district that has a lot of elementary schools nearby.
Yeah.
Within walking distance or maybe a couple minutes by drive. So we were able to get exposed to different schools and kind of network too, in a sense.
Yeah,
and put our name out there. So I think that was really cool. And I agree with what you are saying. What about some things that were difficult? That deep breath.
Oh, okay.
Or do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, me and my friend were the only Asians in our department. And I was like, no, actually, most of my friends in that department were Asian. So like, even then we have such a different experience. And I would say mine was overall positive. There's just this one hiccup that I personally had with the education department where I did not pass one of my content tests. And what is a content test? Like a basic general education test that you have to take in order to get your license.
Yes, get your certification as a teacher.
Yeah, and we had to pass all of those before we started student teaching. And you had to take it on like English, math, science, social studies, PE, whatever. And I did not pass my English test by like 1 or 2 points. It took me the whole summer to pass it. And it was the most lowest. It was such a hard summer.
Yeah, because I was about to go on a crazy rant, but more than anything, I think, which also kind of touches on my con, is that the education department praises themselves in that 98% of the people that graduate get a job right away. 99% of the people who take those content tests pass. And so you're kind of left with this question of, what did I do wrong? Like, why am I like this? And you start questioning your own self without anyone to walk beside you to say that, no, there are people who don't pass.
There was no plan for me. Like, if I didn't pass, I just thought I would not be able to enroll the next semester.
Yeah.
And while I was going through months and months of just like not being able to pass, there weren't a lot of support or like check-ins.
No.
And I felt very alone in the process, and also just like very ashamed because none of the people that I knew in my cohort that year didn't pass or did not pass.
Right.
So I was feeling shameful. I didn't want to talk about it, but I also was just really struggling to know, like, what does this mean then? Does it mean I'm not a good teacher? Does it mean I'm not qualified? Like, I just didn't understand why this was happening. Going through that experience really affected my confidence, not just as a future educator, but as a person.
No, for real.
About to graduate and be in the real world. And I just had wished maybe there was a little more support and guidance with that.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, disclaimer, I did too. I failed my SPED content test. And that was I was flabbergasted at myself. And not just that, with methods, there's also a process you need to go through to like get into methods, which no one told me. Jessie said our experience was so different. And because she went through so much of that challenge before I did, even though it's just 1 year apart, when I kind of came to her for it, she was like, girlfriend, you got this. And it felt real. Like the encouragement felt real because she went through that. That support changes just even your mindset and how to approach those challenging moments. It's so unfortunate. The people that would have dedicated, are supposed to dedicate their career to supporting you, because that is what an educator is, didn't do that for you. It makes me, not going to lie, very frustrated, because if it was any other department, I don't think I would have had that expectation. But they were teachers training teachers. That's our major.
They were teachers too once.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah. All I'm trying to say is, like, I did not feel met with where I was at. They were waiting to meet me somewhere further than I was ever at that place in my life.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you can relate to that too when you share your experience, which we were like, how long should we talk about this? Like, how much should we share? But
I'll be as concise and just straight to the point as possible with this. Kind of, I touched on it just right now and in previous episodes, but I think Wheaton overall was a little bit overly image conscious with education, because we represent Wheaton. We're representing them as teachers, not just students. So there was really so much pressure to be perfect. And there are not a lot of support as much as you would think. Before, I kind of dismissed that and just thought, okay, I just need to be better. I just need to be representing Wheaton better and be professional and get things down, prepare ahead of time, don't worry about myself, and kind of try to just get there. And then I hit student teaching. I started teaching and it was going okay. And it got to a place where my cooperating teacher and I weren't matching. It definitely got to a point where I truly was not okay in the brain. And so it was like spiraling really, really bad downwards. Later on, my department had to pull me out of that situation because my cooperating teacher was, no, it's it.
And also those things, even the way that was handled, because you're not the only one that got pulled out. Like there have been people in the past too where that has to be the case. And to be honest, it's very hush hush.
It is hush hush.
Like even the way that it's handled is so just like sweep it under the rug. Let's like pretend like this
never
had never happened. And I think that in itself isn't setting us up for the reality of like, no, there are teachers that might be racist, that might be just absolutely horrible as a human being. And it's almost made to seem like, wow, you could not make it work. Yeah. Like you couldn't handle that. You didn't have the brain power or the strength to work through that. I was pulled out pretty early into the student teaching. So for months, I didn't tell my cohort. All the professors knew, but they acted like they had no idea. I thought some of them literally had no idea that I was pulled out because of the way they acted. That's tough. They're almost like, what do we do with her? And most of my classes that we needed to take during the student teaching was reflecting on how our student teaching was going. I had to talk to my cohort as if I was still in it. It was very, very a shameful and very lonely and crazy season for me, where I questioned just everything. And during this whole time, my supervisor kept promising me that they would be behind me and support me and get me through it. And they got to the next semester. Instead, I got the news that there's a chance that I might never get my teacher licensure. So out of the blue, they're telling me that I should have just chosen a major that was better suited for me when they had given all these promises. More than anything, I had to really work past blaming myself for those actions. I think it was just a reality check that we live in the real world and not just in a Christian circle. They taught me to try to be a perfect teacher, not a loving teacher. It took me to become a teacher to finally learn that I can do hard things. I think that was just such an unfortunate turn of event of a department that's really well known for raising really good teachers. Including yourself. Thank you. I also wanted to touch on the point of, already you guys probably hearing our podcasts and knowing a little bit more about Yehna and I, we're already coming from this shame culture to begin with. We already have this Enneagram wing 1 where we are hard on ourselves. We are very self-critical. And for these experiences to happen to both us individually, it just kind of it intensified it, I feel like. It magnified what we already feel within ourselves. So it wasn't just like a career, personal, like it wasn't a career attack. It was like a personal
Yeah.
attack. I mean, obviously that's how we're going to handle it, right?
It's so true.
So again, it wasn't a hard season where we're like, oh my gosh, what does our future look like with our careers? It's like, no, are we
Who
okay
are
as
we?
human
Yeah.
beings? And it's unfortunate that that's how we internally process that. But like, we really had to look within our hearts and know God's truth and who we are as people and who we are in God. So you can tell it was a hard season for both Yehna and I at different times. We're still healing from it, as you can tell. But anything else to add, Yehna, before we kind of talk about our last point?
Yes. I promised myself that I would never forget a professor that did really represent what a teacher needed to be and actually represented what the hands and feet of Christ. She was the only professor who sat me down and asked me how I was actually doing post the student teaching experience. And she was the first teacher that told me I was an amazing teacher. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna tear up.
Only it takes that one comment, that one person.
Yes. And she told me, you, not to like toot my own horn or anything, but she was like, you bring joy and you see kids for where they're at. And that's a gift that no one can ever just give you and teach you. I know in that moment that was really difficult for me to take in and
believe for yourself.
Yeah, believe for myself, because everyone was saying or showing otherwise. More than anything, I just want to say thank you to her. She's probably the biggest reason I stuck in this profession. So thank you.
That's awesome that like out of all of this hardship and pain, like you still had that person that spoke that to you.
Yeah.
Like she really walked the talk.
You
know?
She did.
Which is so cool to see and is what we're hoping as educators ourselves to be able to do that to our kids, right? Yeah, yes. That's so cool. I feel like talking in person, like face to face, like I'm feeling the emotions too so much more. So I'm like tearing up here. But let's go to our last point of now as teachers, what would we have wanted to be prepared for more? We do cover this in our first SPED episode. And it's not just educators. I think it's everyone of knowing how to manage relationships that are multi-generational.
Yes, especially when you're in your early 20s.
For sure.
Yeah, because especially as special education teachers, we're assigned classroom aides or paraprofessionals. And most of the time, these people have been in this field for years.
And here you are in the lead position, having to tell those people with experience what to do. Yeah. And it's such an intimidating, it's so intimidating.
It is. To confront someone older than us already as like Asians, it's just like, what the heck? That makes no sense. How could we tell someone that is almost our parents' age,
can you not say this? Or can you not do this?
It just feels, no, I should do that. Like, no, that's my role. I'm the teacher. Yeah. I wish they had touched on not just classroom management in terms of students, but classroom management for the people you'd be working side by side with, which then kind of goes to the next is that we wish they had at least role played what a parent teacher conference was going to look like, holding conversations with parents, especially when you have to say hard things to them or talk through maybe more not so positive behavior that a student may have displayed, and just thinking, how do we navigate that conversation with people who are in such different stages in their life than us?
And honestly, it doesn't even have to be parent specific. I think we're just asking for like conflict resolution classes.
Yes.
Basically a class to help us be in tension, how to navigate conflicts, how to be in a position of leadership. That applies to any work field.
So true.
Right?
So true.
More of like a let's prepare you for adulthood kind of class.
Right.
Would have been great.
Being a good teacher, I think I wish they would have encouraged us to, more than having the perfect lesson plan and more than having just all the curriculum memorized and the core standards planned out to a T. I wish they would have sat with us to say that it's, first of all, we're trying to navigate adulthood and we're trying to navigate how to be functioning people in this society. much less trying to be a good teacher and a role model for the next generation. And so I wish they would have put less pressure on being this perfectly well-rounded, knowledgeable, academically sound teacher, but more someone who had a heart for the kids.
Amen. Because at the end of the day, what matters is the relationship building. And we're constantly having to remind ourselves as we're teaching now, too. Like sometimes we can get caught up trying to run things well. And we always have to remind ourselves, no, it's about like asking how that kid's weekend was. It's about sitting down with them and listening to their random rants that they have.
Right.
It's really just so simple, yet we make it so complicated. And I think it's all of this drilled into us that, oh, we got to make sure we have this content mastered and this, and like the lesson plan needs to look like this, and the way that you show up professionally needs to look like this.
Yeah. Of course, we still struggle with that balance as teachers, because I'm not trying to say we should disregard academics altogether. I wish we were told that that's not everything. Yeah. And some professors did. I appreciate that.
We talked a lot about, I feel like, more cons than pros, but at the end of this, like, why are we even doing this episode? Like, what's our end goal from this?
So we talked about this, and I kind of paused for a long time because I didn't know what the end goal, or I didn't really have an ending statement or a lesson I could give to you guys and be like, guys, be inspired,
Yeah. And we're also not on here to be like, this is our experience and this sucked and da da da. Well, it's not a complaining session here. We're not here to diminish or trash any other people's experience or even how the system was run. Right?
Exactly. Of course, I don't want to ever underestimate the hurt that we had to endure.
Yeah.
And I think what I really want to say is, more than anything, the reason I don't have this perfect ending statement or this inspirational quote to give you all is because, at least for me, I'm still very much in this journey of finding forgiveness and finding redemption from all that I had to work through and learn and endure. More than anything, it's just you guys would pray for me or future teachers. We wouldn't be caught up in what the professors wanted us to be or what the school wanted us to be, but we would learn to be teachers who see students' hearts and to love on them and not get so caught up in performing perfectly and wanting our students to perform perfectly.
And for Christian educators, to seek God's face first.
Yeah.
Yehna and I were just recently at church and we heard this sermon of, you got to pursue and crave God first for everything else to line up for you.
So
it's
true.
not, God, please make me a better teacher. God, it's like, God, I want to pursue you and know you deeply. And that comes first, because then that's going to help me love my kids better. That's going to help me navigate through managing all that teaching is.
At the end of the day, I can't forgive anyone with my own power.
Yeah.
God, I can't do anything, but I know you can. So you better work.
Make it work.
Make it work for me. Just kidding. For real. I know this was kind of like a brain dump of a session. We wanted to share that experience, and hopefully anybody who's listening who might be in the education field or not even in the education field,
or like feel like their department or their college experience failed them in giving them guidance or success for their careers now. Because I know of people that like that too.
Exactly.
What did my major do to me?
Exactly.
Like, what was that for? And I just want to let you know, we acknowledge that too.
Yeah. Your journey at your own pace is so important too. Yes, we want to gain wisdom from other people, but it's okay to weed some of those painful things out. As we are navigating all of that, we pray that you guys will also learn to rely on God and find support. You don't do it alone, because someone who did, don't do it. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please follow us on our Spotify, our YouTube, and our Instagram. Guys, we hit 1 million views on one of our posts. Woo-hoo. Like, what the heck? Anyway, just little victories like that is really cool. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Bye. Bye.